Huh, that's interesting, because I could have sworn that yesterday we learned that the FBI tapped my phone. So here you have an administration that is activating the FBI against its political opponents and tapping the phones of United States senators. It is a stain on the history of this country and on the conscience of this country what this administration did in the last 4 years. So here's what I think needs to happen.
Classic move. Shift the lens. If they're accusing her of favoritism, she counters with Democratic hypocrisy. This is where the hearing becomes less about Comey and more about who controls the narrative.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Attorney General Bondi, good to see you. Welcome. I've been listening closely in this hearing, and I've heard over and over from my Democrat colleagues concerns about targeting political enemies, and they've accused you of all manner of things and the current president. I've also heard them said, and I just wrote it down because I want to be sure I heard it correctly, I've heard them say that Joe Biden never targeted his political enemies. Joe Biden never directed his attorney general to target his political opponents. Huh, that's interesting, because I could have sworn that yesterday we learned that the FBI tapped my phone. Let's look at it. We've got a list. Tapped my phone, tapped Lindsey Graham's phone, tapped Marsha Blackburn's phone, tapped 5 other phones of United States senators. Gee, it sure looks like targeting political opponents to me, and yet I haven't heard a word from that side of the dais about any concern whatsoever. We've got nothing but concerns today, but no concern at all for a Justice Department that is tapping the phones of sitting United States senators because who knows why. They don't like them. They're members of the opposition party. They're Republicans. They're conservatives. You've seen this document, Attorney General Bondi. Well, what was going on here? Who ordered this?
That accusation hits like a freight train. Sitting U.S. senators being surveilled, that moves the story from politics as usual into constitutional crisis territory. Notice how Hawley frames them tapping Republicans because they don't like conservatives as a clear motive. He's setting up a narrative of weaponized government from the very first minute.
Who ordered the tapping of the phones of United States senators?
Senator Hawley, I cannot discuss the details of that right now for very good reason.
You're going to do a thorough investigation into this, I trust. Is that correct?
We will be looking at all aspects of this, and I have talked to Director Patel at length about
And
this.
you're going to figure out who was involved in this, who signed off on it, who knew about it. You're going to get to the bottom of all of it. Is it correct?
Yes, and I've spoken to Director Patel about it, and he is committed to doing this.
Well, I can tell you, we already know many of the details. We already know that this was ordered by the Special Prosecutor Jack Smith, who reported directly to the Attorney General of the United States, Merrick Garland. And we know that Jack Smith was on his witch hunt because he was directed to do so by the President of the United States, Joe Biden. Let's just remember. Let's take a walk down memory lane. April 2nd, 2022, the New York Times. Garland faces growing pressure. The Times says as recently as late last year, that would have been 2021, Mr. Biden confided to his inner circle he believed former President Trump was a threat to democracy and should be prosecuted. It goes on to say that Biden was frustrated with Garland and wanted him to take decisive action against Trump.
Now Hawley names names. Jack Smith becomes a villain figure here, not just prosecuting Trump, but supposedly hunting senators too. By linking phone taps to Biden frustration over Trump, Hawley is arguing intent. That's where this goes from scandal to conspiracy, at least as framed.
Did it, Attorney General Bondi? It didn't stop here at all. I mean, just as egregious, maybe more so than tapping the phones of U.S. senators, is this memo that I know you've seen before. Let's just look at it again. This is an FBI memo from the same time period, I might add, from the same time period, in which the Federal Bureau of Investigation attempts to recruit informants into Catholic parishes in this country. So here you have an administration that is activating the FBI against its political opponents and tapping the phones of United States senators. Can I just say that again for my colleagues, for the benefit of my colleagues on the other side of the dais? Tapping the phones of United States senators. This isn't hypothetical. This isn't maybe what will you do in the future. This isn't, oh, gee, can you imagine the situation? This happened. This happened. And this happened. The targeting of Catholics in this country because Joe Biden and his FBI didn't like Catholics who went to a certain kind of mass. I mean, good God in heaven. What is happening to this country? What happened under Joe Biden? Or then how about this, the infamous school board memo, where Merrick Garland, at the direction of the White House, issued a memo activating the FBI's counterterrorism division against parents who attended school board meetings
This is a pivot. Not only senators, but religion, specifically Catholics, being flagged. That shakes a very large audience base and paints the DOJ as crossing a deeply personal boundary. Hawley's tone becomes alarmed, almost moral and existential.
And had the temerity to ask what their kids were being taught. And some of those parents were treated like this. Let's just remember. Let's remember how parents were treated. Treated like this man. A parent at a school board meeting, I think in Virginia, who was drug out of the school board meeting. He's bloodied there, you can see it. And what was the response of Joe Biden's DOJ and FBI? It was to issue a memorandum saying that people like this ought to be investigated by the counterterrorism unit. And unbelievably, they were. They were. Or how about this? Let's remember Mark Houck and the pro-lifers who were prosecuted for what? For going to a clinic, an abortion clinic, and praying on a sidewalk outside an abortion clinic. This is Mark Houck and his beautiful family at Mass. This man, at the direction of Joe Biden's FBI, this man had an FBI SWAT team come to his door in the early morning hours with his beautiful children there, terrorizing them with weapons drawn. He was then arrested and prosecuted. And fortunately, a jury acquitted him. This is what was happening under Joe Biden. United States senators spied upon. Former presidents, the political opponents of the president at the time, targeted, prosecuted. Pro-lifers, targeted, prosecuted. Catholics, targeted, prosecuted. 92 conservative organizations put under surveillance, targeted for potential prosecution.
Hawley fires off rapid-fire anecdotes, bloodied parents, FBI raids, SWAT teams. The goal is to show that this is not isolated or elite. Everyday Americans are supposedly paying the price. Whether viewers agree or not, the rhetoric clearly targets emotion.
Gee, I don't know. Would you call that an example of weaponization, Attorney General Bondi? Do you think that's a fair characterization?
Senator Hawley, that is the ultimate weaponization. And weaponization under Donald Trump has ended. It has ended. Harmeet Dillon is running our civil rights unit, and she is doing an incredible job. No longer will parents be targeted. No longer will parents who care about whether their elementary school children have to read a transgender book be targeted and told they cannot have any say in their child's education. That has ended under this administration. People can worship freely, whether they're Catholics at synagogues or Muslims. Everyone can worship freely. That was the ultimate weaponization. They were targeting Catholics. No longer. They have been targeting so many American citizens throughout this country. And Senator Hawley, you have been a champion of this, and thank you for being a champion of that. But under Donald Trump's watch, it has ended.
You know, I think about some of the abuses of power in this country's history, and there's been, sadly, a lot of them by members of the executive branch over the years, whether it's Watergate, whether it's what J. Edgar Hoover did in his time at the FBI, spying on many public figures, RFK, MLK, JFK, you name it.
Bondi turns accusation into campaign promise. Things were bad, but now we fixed it. It's a political mirror, admitting the alleged abuses only to highlight the new administration as the hero.
And I just have to say, what we now know happened in the last 4 years under this administration surpasses all of that. It surpasses all of it, not just for the interference in the legislative branch, not just for the blatant disregard for the separation of powers, not just for the blatant disregard for the First Amendment, but for the targeting of ordinary American citizens who can't afford lawyers, who can't afford to mount a defense, who when the FBI knocks at their door or comes with a SWAT team, they don't know what to do. It is absolutely a disgrace. It is a stain on the history of this country and on the conscience of this country, what this administration did in the last 4 years. So here's what I think needs to happen. Madam Attorney General, I think we need a special prosecutor to be appointed whose sole responsibility will be to get to the bottom of what has happened in every instance that I have just named. I think we need to know exactly who approved the wiretaps on United States senators, who knew about it, what agents were involved at DOJ or the FBI. I think we need to know exactly who signed off on the Catholic memo, the spying memo. Who was involved with it? How far did it go? I think we need to know exactly who authorized the prosecution of Mark Houck, who terrorized pro-lifers and tried to intimidate them. I think we need to know. And Mr. Chairman, this committee needs to do oversight hearings. We need to have thorough hearings into what has happened these last 4 years and this abuse that has now just been uncovered, because we have to ensure that it stops. as you just said, Attorney General Bondi, we have to ensure that it stops. This chapter in American history needs to come to a close, never to be opened again.
This is where Hawley shifts from outrage to action. The story becomes an unfinished quest. Investigations, prosecutions, transparency, all unresolved. It tees up suspense that continues far beyond this hearing.
The use of the most powerful law enforcement bodies in the world against ordinary citizens and political opponents must end once and for all. And we have a chance to do it, and it needs to be done with a thorough investigation, full transparency. And those who violated laws need to be prosecuted. I thank you for what you're doing, Attorney General Bondi. I hope that you will launch a thorough investigation. I hope you'll appoint a special prosecutor. Mr. Chairman, I hope we'll hold hearings. And with that, I yield.
This hearing feels like the kind of moment that doesn't stay confined to a committee room. It ripples outward through headlines into dinner conversations and straight into the very uncomfortable question of whether the most powerful law enforcement agencies in the world are truly protecting the people or policing them. Senator Hawley doesn't mince words here. He takes us down a long, dark hallway, flicking on lights one by one. Phone taps, raids, religious surveillance, school board parents being dragged away from microphones. The imagery he uses is cinematic. Bloodied faces, SWAT teams at the front door, secret memos and wiretaps, and a looming sense of something that feels more like a political thriller than everyday governance. That kind of storytelling is powerful. It jolts you awake. It makes ordinary citizens wonder, could that happen to me? Could I wake up one day and find out a federal agency decided I'm a threat because of who I voted for, or where I worshiped, or what I asked at a school board meeting? There's a reason people react so strongly to the idea of surveillance. Tapping the phone lines of senators isn't just controversial. It pokes directly at the foundation of democracy. The idea that elected officials can speak freely, challenge power, and represent their voters without being monitored like criminals. When Hawley says this surpasses Watergate, he's trying to put these claims not just on the historical scoreboard, but at the top. Whether viewers agree or believe every word, the scale of the allegations forces attention. Nobody shrugs at accusations like this. They lean forward. And then there's Bondi. Her role is subtle but crucial. She doesn't push back on the premise of abuse, she validates it. She declares that this was the ultimate weaponization and insists that the only reason it's not continuing is because the administration changed hands. In her framing, this is not ancient history. It's not hypothetical. It's something she claims was happening just months ago, abruptly halted, like a train yanked off the tracks. That instantly raises another question. If everything stopped so suddenly, how much was really happening behind the scenes? And how many people were involved? There's a dramatic shift that happens when Hawley moves from recounting shocking events to demanding justice. By calling for a special prosecutor, he transforms the moment from outrage into a mission. It's not just about sympathy for the victims or frustration with the past. It's a demand for consequence, accountability, names, trials. He lays out a checklist of mysteries he wants solved. Who approved the taps? Who wrote the memos? Who watched Americans through a scope and called it national security? That kind of call to action always electrifies a political audience. Supporters feel like the cavalry has arrived. Critics might feel like this is political theater designed to inflame emotions and rewind old grievances. But either way, it sets a narrative in motion. This story is not finished. The credits do not roll here.
There's another layer to all of this, too. Hawley isn't only defending senators. He keeps swinging the spotlight back to ordinary Americans. That might be the most effective part of his strategy. When power is portrayed as stomping down on those who can't fight back, it becomes personal. A parent could picture themselves in that school board video. A person of faith could imagine their own priest being approached by the FBI. A protester could worry that a quiet demonstration outside a clinic could suddenly turn into arrest warrants and federal charges. The more everyday the examples become, the more extraordinary the accusations feel. And then there's the emotional question he asks, without wording it explicitly. Where does this end? If government agencies really crossed these lines once, who stops them from doing it again? Fear grows fastest in the cracks where trust breaks. Americans might disagree on nearly everything these days, but there is a rare bipartisan truth. Nobody wants to be targeted by their own government. What makes this moment even gripping is that Hawley doesn't claim these are just bureaucratic oversteps or policy mistakes. He paints them as acts fueled by politics, driven by dislike of opponents, weaponized against people with the wrong beliefs. That narrative lands like a spark in dry grass. The audience instantly understands the stakes. If this happened to Republicans today, could it happen to Democrats tomorrow? If this happened to one church group, could another be next? If you cheer when the camera swivels at someone else, what happens when the camera swivels?
This hearing is full of contradictions and unanswered questions. That's part of what makes it feel dramatic. Hawley insists he already knows many details about who approved the taps. Bondi says she can't share anything yet. There are hints of classified information and hidden actors and directors behind the scenes. That sense of secrecy is intoxicating for a political audience. It invites speculation, suspicion, and a craving for the next episode. People walk away not feeling like something ended, but like something massive just began. So here we are, watching two officials declare that a chapter of American history must close forever. Their words make it sound like we're standing at a crossroads between liberty and something much scarier. They frame this not as a policy debate, but as a moral reckoning, a test of whether the United States remembers how to correct itself when the government grows claws instead of hands. The big question now is who you believe and what you want to happen next. Do you think Hawley just exposed a genuine constitutional nightmare? Or does this all feel like a political performance, carefully staged to score points and stir frustration? Is it bravery or is it theatrics? Is the government being held accountable or has outrage become the most powerful tool in politics? These questions aren't going away because distrust doesn't vanish just because someone tells you everything is fine now. It lingers. It waits for the next headline, the next testimony, the next story of a knock on someone's door at dawn. The people who feel targeted might breathe easier after these promises, but promises aren't proof. And those who doubt every claim might brush this off as exaggeration, until evidence lands that forces them to reconsider. You're watching a moment that tries to redefine what the government can and cannot do to its own citizens. That's not small. It's not forgettable. It's the kind of argument that shapes elections, hardens beliefs, and pulls political lines tighter. It sparks anger in some, fear in others, and curiosity in everyone who wonders what happens when light finally shines on every hidden file and every classified memo mentioned today. So now I want to hear from you. In your gut, does this feel like a true crisis that demands accountability? Or a storyline built to feed outrage and keep division alive? How much trust do you have left in the institutions designed to protect you? Which part of this testimony struck you the hardest, and why? Drop your thoughts below. No matter where you stand, your voice is part of the larger picture. This conversation doesn't end with the hearing. It continues right here, in the comments, where America always tests its own beliefs.